Look at our top story. The top story of the day remains the violent face-off at the India-China border on Monday. Now, the Indian Army has confirmed that a violent face-off took place along the line of actual control on Monday night. Now, 3 Indian Army men lost their lives in the ensuing face-off at the Galwan Valley in Ladakh. The casualties included 1 senior officer and 2 soldiers. According to the Indian Army, China also suffered casualties during the escalation. Sources have confirmed to WION that no firing took place at the line of actual control, so the nature of the face-off points at a physical skirmish for the time being. The violent face-off reportedly took place while both sides were de-escalating after a massive build-up in tensions over the past few weeks. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh held a meeting with Chief of Defence Staff Bipin Rawat, the 3 service chiefs and Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar to take stock of the situation. The Indian Defence Minister has briefed Prime Minister Narendra Modi of Monday night's incidents. China, for its part, has accused the Indian troops of crossing the border twice and provoking and attacking Chinese soldiers. Beijing, however, is yet to admit that they have suffered any casualties during the face-off.
Not the way. If you two want to find miscommunication, see, if we have any miscommunication, if we have some way, so we can talk.
Recently, in order to ease the situation in the border areas between China and India maintained close communication through diplomatic and military channels. On June 6, the border troops of 2 countries held a commander-level military meeting and reached an important consensus on easing the situation in the border areas. But what is shocking is that on June 15th, the Indian troops seriously violated the consensus of the 2 sides. They crossed the border illegally twice and carried out provocative attacks on Chinese personnel, resulting in serious physical conflicts between the 2 border forces. China has lodged strong protests and solemn complaints with the Indian side, and once again solemnly demands that the Indian side strictly restrain the frontline troops in accordance with the relevant spirit. Do not cross the border, do not act provocatively, do not take any unilateral actions that will complicate the border situation. China and India agree to continue to resolve bilateral issues through dialogue and consultation and make efforts to ease the tension and maintain peace and tranquility in the border areas.
Earlier, we spoke to political and economic commentator Aynar Tangen from Beijing for more on this.
It's not exactly clear that the Chinese feel the same way. They believe that they are simply reacting. Now, we're talking about a tale of 2 roads, one built by the Chinese, one built by India. And within the last few days, India announced that they were airlifting heavy equipment into remote areas so they could continue building. I don't know that that was part of the escalation. I just know that these roads are extremely sensitive, not only to China, but also Nepal, and that these are the source of the tension. Both sides believe that the other is trying to steal a march on them, that it's they're entitled to kind of beef up their logistics. And unfortunately, this is leading to higher tensions and the situation. I would correct one thing. There were 2 incidents involving rocks and sticks, iron bars, from what I understand from both the Indian and Chinese side, were used in a face-off on 2 separate occasions earlier. So there could be in this a kind of retaliation. Remember, these are young soldiers. They have a lot of pride. They don't want to be pushed around. If they feel that the other side has done something, they want to push back. It's the nature of young men in this kind of situation. So let's withhold judgment till we know the full story, and then we can discuss what the ramifications will be. It would happen from instructions of up above. This is not the time for Xi Jinping or Modi to be engaging in this kind of theatrics. Both countries have to concentrate on their internal situations, both in terms of health, COVID-19. India is undergoing painful adjustment to this, and then the following economic ones. I don't believe that either side would engage in any kind of attempt to change the public's opinion or get them going in a different direction. I think it'd be very cynical. Certainly not from the Chinese side. If that were the case, they would be already in full-throated cry, claiming that India was at fault and that this was an aggressive move. Since they haven't done that, obviously they weren't prepared for this.
Now we're being joined live by our principal diplomatic correspondent, Siddhant Sibal, for more on this. Good evening to you, Siddhant. You have been keeping up to date with all the latest that is happening. What are the latest details that you have for us on this?
Well, Alison, situation remains precarious at the line of actual control. And right now, the mood in Delhi, what I can tell you is that number of briefings are taking place. In fact, even as I speak, the Indian Army Chief is meeting the Defence Minister Rajnath Singh. And of course, we know that there have been several rounds of briefing taking all throughout the day here in Delhi. But at the LAC also, there is engagement taking place so that there can be diffusion of this crisis. But by and large, this is a major development when it comes to India-China relationship. Killing of Indian soldiers, it hasn't been heard for last more than 40 years, and this is taking place at the LAC in Eastern Ladakh. Shows how tense the situation is, given the fact that it has been building up for a pretty long time. We know it has been building up for last few weeks, and now we know that the fact that it has been confirmed by the Indian Army in a short statement that there have been casualties on both sides. On the Indian side has confirmed 3 casualties. On the Chinese side, there seems to be a confirmation on casualties, but not the numbers. The numbers are still not known, but by and large, we know that both sides have been talking about how there should be resolution of this crisis through talks, and both sides have been engaging. In fact, just yesterday, there was the 4th military level engagement between both the sides, and also at diplomatic levels. We know that the joint secretaries have been speaking to each other. Also, the statements coming from both sides till just yesterday were very positive. Both sides saying that the disputes should not become differences, and both sides were talking about the Wuhan spirit, the Chennai Connect Summit, the Chennai Connect Summit, informal summit which took place last year. But by and large, it seems like that the bonhomie that was created after the Doklam crisis of 2017 has gone away with this crisis, because clearly this is something that has taken the Indian side by surprise, and this development coming at a time of COVID crisis which has globally disrupted normal life. You know, at a time of this COVID crisis, China has been increasingly becoming belligerent, becoming combative, and this is just not at the LAC between India and China where such kind of incidences have been coming to light. We know just today the Taiwanese Defense Ministry confirmed that the Chinese fighter jets flew into their territory. With Japanese also, there have been skirmishes with the Chinese Coast Guard, with Vietnam also. So clearly at a time of this crisis, we have seen China trying to perhaps use this as an opportunity, the COVID crisis, because given the fact that the world is busy dealing with this crisis, China trying to do what it perhaps wanted to do for a pretty long time, but there hasn't been any global reaction so far. But that's perhaps because the development is just, the confirmation of development is just few hours old. We do expect global reactions coming very soon. We know that the US President is expected to get his intel briefing at 11:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time. So we do expect during that briefing there can be some reference to this face-off, the violent face-off between India and China, and this is likely to dominate the global discourse in coming days as well.
Right.